Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith, and today I wanted to bring you a review of one of my favourite ongoing series, the Tide Child series by R.J. Barker. Get ready to experience Judith Loves the Sea turned up to 11. I'm going to put you here so you can be vaguely out of focus in the back of this review. Ooh, there we go. Quick disclaimers before we start. I was sent a review copy, I think digitally, of both The Bone Ships and the sequel Call of the Bone Ships by the publisher for free. That doesn't affect my opinion at all. Nobody is paying me to talk about books. I'm going to keep things as spoiler-free as humanly possible while still talking about two books, so if you want to go in knowing absolutely nothing, click away now. What is the Tide Child series? Firstly, it's a really difficult thing to say. Tide Child. This features two books currently out. The first one is The Bone Ships, and the second book is Call of the Bone Ships, which comes out at the end of November. These are adult fantasy books. I believe there is at least one more book due. Quick Google found a title that was The Wake of the Bone Ships, I think. Let me check my notes. No, The Bone Ships Wake. I don't know if that's actually the title that's coming out, but hey, the two titles that are currently out are quite similar, and while that really annoys me, that doesn't actually have any bearing on the book itself, so to avoid confusion, I'm going to, for most of this review, call them Book 1 and Book 2. Who's R.J. Barker? R.J. Barker is a Leeds-based author, Leeds in England. His first trilogy is the Wounded Kingdom series, which starts with Age of Assassins. I haven't read those, but you know who has? Justine over at I Should Read That, so I urge you, go and check out her. I think she's got video reviews on some of them, maybe. I will link whatever can be linked in all the places. What are these books about? The Tide Child series, which I still can't say, and on top of that, I always type it as Tildchide. So the Tildchide series. This series follows Joran, who is a young man who at the start of book 1 is serving on the Tide Child, which is a ship, as shipwife, which is sort of the equivalent of captain in this world. The ship Tide Child is one of the many bone ships in the fleet. It's made out of the bones of these enormous sea dragons that we don't really see anymore. They've basically been hunted into extinction. The fleet is a series of these ships that is fighting a never-ending war, or seemingly never-ending. But the Tide Child is a black ship, a ship that is served by the dead, in the sense that if you do a crime, you can be sentenced to serve on a black ship, and you serve until you die. But right at the start of book 1, Joran's authority is taken by Lucky Mies, who's a fabled shipwife, and she quickly sets about getting the crew and Joran whipped into shape. Why? Because another sea dragon's been spotted, and they need to chase it down and kill it, and turn the tide of the war. Pun absolutely intended. So yes, it's a dragon-chasing, seafaring book. It falls more on the side of navy than piracy, but it's got a lot of piratey elements to it, so double thumbs up. I absolutely adore this setting. R.J. Barker admits in his afterword in book 1 that he quite often may have let some of the sailing accuracy go for the sake of, I think this will be cool. So while this might not be an 100% accurate, you could use this book as a manual to sail your own tall ship made out of dragon bone, I don't know why that would ever come up, but it's not that. But I think one of the things that R.J. Barker does really well is exploring how culture can shape language and how that can affect things like jargon and how we talk about various things. For example, right from the start, you can tell this isn't a patriarchal society because the word for captain is shipwife. There are numerous other examples of how, both on ship and on shore, the language of this world is both shaped by and shapes the culture and the way that things are. It's one of my absolute favourite world building things. I think language is so important, and why language is the way it is so interesting, and R.J. Barker even includes a glossary at the back of his book with key terms in case you get a little bit lost. I think it just helps me feel totally immersed in a new world. The plot. While chasing a sea dragon is a really cool idea and a cool driving force of the book, it's the kind of plots that are happening that really captured me for this one. Seeing someone or some people grow and change as characters and improve and develop, it's one of my absolute favourite things in literature. I love to read it, and it happens for a multitude of characters across this series. Lucky Mies is one of my favourite characters of all time, and the way that her relationship with Joran and the crew develops across the books is just perfection. It's so good. The way that the conflicts between the characters arise and are dealt with in various different ways, it's just so well written and so well thought out, and a tiny thing at the beginning of one conversation could lead to something so far down the line. There's something about reading a powerful woman be unapologetic about it and get things done, and at the same time having other characters have to deal with their own reaction to that and their own ego. It just makes for really, really good reading. There is something of an underdog story in this book, and I think that's something that has universal appeal. What I won't do is go into the plot to book 2 too much, because again, obviously it would be a bit of a spoiler, but all I will say is it goes to places I don't think I ever expected it would at the end of book 1. But what it does do is maintain a lot of the same themes as book 1 has, and you get even more attached to these characters. So if you loved book 1, you will absolutely love book 2. Yet another personal Judith box that this book ticks is music. Music is intricately tied into this book. That's unsurprising since R.J. Barker has a musical background, but I think also it's really hard to write a culture that is tied around sailing and the sea without recognising that music plays a huge part in that. There's a reason that a lot of folk songs are about the sea. Rowing songs and shanties are included at the start of many of the chapters, and again, it just helps to cement that this is a cultural thing, that this is something that people live, eat, sleep and breathe. On top of that, there is a magical musical element, which I won't go into too much here because it's kind of a spoiler, but suffice to say, this hits all of my yes, this is very cool buttons. For those who haven't watched my vlogs, I do have this tabbed with all of the sea shanties that I think would work to actually write music to in book 1. I haven't done it for book 2 because I don't have it physically, but one day sea shanty songs shall be written based on the bone ships. One day. One thing that you might want to bear in mind while reading this series is that this is a setting where birth defects are a bad thing. In this setting, if you are born with a disability, you're kind of cast out, you cannot serve in the fleet, it's a bad thing, and it's sort of weirdly tied into your future job. So for example, if you only had one leg, you would have to become a cobbler, or similarly, if you had only one hand, you'd have to become a tailor, that kind of thing. I'm not 100% sold on that aspect of it, but it's so tied into the culture of these people that it kind of makes sense when you're reading it. This book definitely pushes against that ideology rather than glorifying it, but I thought it was worth mentioning, especially if that's something you want to avoid. It's pushed against even more in book 2, so stick with it if you're finding it a bit weird in book 1. The other thing I will mention is that a part of that is that infertility is brought up quite a bit in this book. Just something to bear in mind if you don't like reading books where that happens. Obviously, it's not particularly important to the main plot of the book, but it comes across in the cultural stuff. Other thing I thought I might mention is I found both books a little bit slow to start, which is odd given that I jumped straight into Call of the Bone Ships after book 1. Both of them take a little bit of time to really get their stride. There is a lot of ground to cover in both books and a lot of setting up of what has happened to get us to the point at the start of the book. So all I'll say is stick with it. They really, really pick up at about kind of the 100-page mark. Comparisons, things that you might want to read if you haven't already read this. I am going to put Joe Abercrombie in this box because I think similarly that character development and character change across a series is one thing that Joe Abercrombie writes really well. You don't get necessarily as much character improvement, but character change I would definitely say is a thing. If you love books about boats and dragons, then Robin Hobb's Live Ships trilogy. I have finished almost all of them. I am on the last book of the Rain Wilds, and then I have to do the others, but Live Ships you could start with and you would have a good time. And then sort of anything with an unlikely squad. Most of the time those tend to be not fantasy books. I don't know why, I've just read more fantasy books where it's like, we're crewing a spaceship and we don't like each other, rather than we're crewing an actual ship and we don't like each other. But things like Skyward, I've recently read Doing Time by Jodie Taylor. I think that would be another good example. Anything with an unlikely squad. Similar vibes. Final thoughts. Should you read this series? Yes, 100% absolutely. I don't even have to think about it. You should go and read them. These are some of my favourite sea-based books, which is another great video idea. Well done me. Let's do that at some point. I love the character development so much. I love the setting to pieces. It's just everything I want. I want to thrust a copy into the hands of everyone I know. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you find another book that you really want to read, or maybe you've already read them and you just wanted somebody else to have liked them. That's me. Please comment below with your thoughts on this book and also any other recommendations for seafaring books. It's all I want in life. Give me your recommendations. While you're down there, you can follow me on all of my social media. That's linked in the description. You can also subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith, and today I want to bring you a... So, what is The Tide Show? This series follows Joran, a young boy, a young man, he's a man, is one of my absolute, It's, what did I say?